Patsy loves both her children dearly, but frankly, she and JonBenét were extremely close.
A Christmas morning photo of the kids. If I told you right now that we have trace evidence that appears to link you to the death of JonBenét, what would you tell me?
Subscribe now and drop your thoughts in the comments below, because what follows isn't another retelling of a tragedy you already know. It's about one man's late confession, new cracks in the story his family told for 28 years, and the concrete pieces of evidence those admissions force back into the light. Share where you're watching from and what you think. Was this protection, a desperate cover-up, or something else entirely? John Ramsey's recent public statements have done something remarkable. They moved what many assumed was settled ground back into motion. He has urged authorities to retest critical items: the note, the garrote, the flashlight, using modern genetic genealogy. At the same time, he has publicly suggested that his late wife may have been involved. That combination, asking for cutting-edge testing while intimating an inside role, is combustible. It reframes decades of decisions and raises immediate questions. What did John know? When did he know it? And why did the family present one version of events for so long? Those aren't idle queries. They're the spine of a story in which forensic detail, human choices, and the passage of time have created a volatile mix. Today we'll take that mix apart piece by piece, interrogating what John's words do to the most compelling physical clues and to the two dominant scenarios that have always been pitted against each other. Start with the ransom note. It's not an accessory, it's a behavioral key. 2.5 pages, written on paper from inside the house, drafted and practiced, not scribbled in panic. The demanded sum, $118,000, matched John Ramsey's year-end bonus down to the dollar. Linguistically, the note reads like someone imitating movie dialogue, theatrical, oddly punctuated, and peppered with lines that don't neatly map onto real-world extortion. Handwriting analysts have disagreed for decades. A number suggested Patsy could not be excluded as the writer. Whatever you make of those conclusions, the concrete facts remain. The note was composed with materials from the home and in multiple drafts. If someone intended to use that note to support an intruder narrative, they went to the trouble of scripting it in the very place they wanted to hide the truth. John Ramsey's recent insistence that certain items be retested forces reconfrontation with this inconvenient detail. The note's provenance and contents are not peripheral. They are central to understanding what kind of event the family was staging, if indeed anything was staged. Next, consider the garrote, the improvised ligature made from a broken paintbrush handle and cord. The handle was traced to Patsy's art supplies. Paint fragments consistent with that brush were reportedly found in traumatic areas on the victim. Whether that indicates sexual assault, intimate contact, or simple transfer of material during a violent event, the brush's direct connection to household materials makes it undeniably internal to the home. A missing top third of the brush remains unaccounted for. Why remove it? If the act had been committed by an intruder, why choose a tool taken from an occupant's paint kit instead of bringing a weapon from outside? John Ramsey's public pivot toward asking for new forensic work places the brush back on the table, retest fragments, seek genetic traces, and determine if modern methods can identify a contributor previously undetectable in the 1990s. But beyond lab possibilities, the brush's presence has always asked a social question. Did someone in the house know where to find the tool and use it, or was the brush deliberately placed to mislead? Then there's the Maglite flashlight and the injury it matches. Forensic reenactments have shown that a heavy cylindrical object of that size could create the specific cranial fracture pattern found. The flashlight on the kitchen counter that morning was wiped clean of fingerprints, batteries included. That detail is striking for two reasons. First, people rarely meticulously clean batteries. Second, the flashlight was positioned conspicuously, almost as if meant to be found. If a child had acted impulsively, you would expect chaos, not thoughtful removal of fingerprints and careful placement. The practical inference some investigators have taken is that an adult handled the aftermath, cleaned the implement, staged it, and presented it in a way that could be used to shape the narrative of the scene. John's new vocal push for testing drags this artifact back into focus. Whose print should be on those batteries if not the person who handled it? If new testing shows what old testing could not, that will change interpretations. If not, the flashlight remains an unnerving emblem of questions about who curated the scene. The pineapple belongs in the same uncomfortable paragraph. The coroner's report placed fresh pineapple in the victim's small intestine, indicating ingestion within 1 to 2 hours of death. A white bowl of pineapple sat on the Ramsay breakfast table that night. Burke's fingerprints were on the bowl, Patsy's on the spoon. The family's narrative, that both children went straight to bed, collapses under this simple forensic detail. If both children were asleep, who fed JonBenét? Why deny a midnight snack that the body subsequently confirmed? John's recent statements that urge reopening testing reanimate this contradiction. The pineapple ties 2 occupants to a specific location and window of time that the official story repeatedly downplayed. It is small in scale but huge in implication. A fresh, physical timestamp that undermines the bedtime alibi. Equally difficult to reconcile is the 911 call. At 5:52 a.m. Patsy reported a kidnapping. Later audio enhancements allegedly revealed faint extraneous voices, one possibly a young voice asking, "What did you find?" after the call had supposedly ended. If a child's voice was captured, it contradicts claims that he had slept through everything. If someone in the house already knew something had been found at that early hour, what was found, and who asked the question? The enhanced audio is not definitive without court-admissible confirmation, but its existence forces re-evaluation. Someone in the household may have been aware of developments before the official narrative claimed discovery. John's public statements invite investigators back to that file, to re-listen with fresh methods or recontextualize what previous enhancements suggested. That is precisely what reopened scrutiny looks like. Small anomalies resurrected until they form a pattern. Now let's frame the 2 dominant scenarios in light of these details and John's admission. Scenario 1 assumes a tragic intra-house event, an accidental blow, an impulsive assault, or an escalation between family members, followed by a hurried, calculated attempt to cover it up and present the scene as a kidnapping. In that reading, the note is a manufactured smokescreen. The brush and ligature are household materials repurposed to disguise the proximate cause of death. The maglite is a plausible blunt force instrument cleaned and staged by someone with presence of mind, and the pineapple reveals the presence of the children in the kitchen in the crucial hours. John's recent comments, calling for modern testing while publicly suggesting Patsy might have been involved, fit uneasily into this scenario. They could represent a husband trying to provoke new lab work to clarify an ambiguous past, or they could be seen as someone grappling with guilt and the morality of shielding a family member. Either way, the scenario is internally consistent with the domestic provenance of the key items. Scenario 2 preserves the intruder hypothesis. A stranger entered via the broken window, used a weapon or multiple implements, and left behind foreign male DNA and unexplained boot prints. Advocates point to unknown male DNA on garments as evidence that cannot be easily explained away. Proponents argue that the ransom note and staged aspects could be the work of a sanitizing intruder or a panicked household attempting to explain a gruesome scene. This scenario gains plausibility if modern genealogy testing were to match the unknown male DNA to an external individual. John Ramsey's push for retesting items with modern methods could vindicate this approach. But the intruder theory has to answer uncomfortable questions. Why use household stationery for a ransom note? Why demand an amount that matches the father's bonus? And why choose a brush already present in the home as a makeshift garrote? Each of those facts sits awkwardly with the idea of a random, opportunist outsider. John Ramsey's statements complicate both scenarios because they come from someone with unique access to the family's private choices. He is the only person who can credibly assert what the family did in the days and hours that followed, who moved where, what was known, and what was hidden. When he suggests retesting and simultaneously intimates Patsy's involvement, it does something that is both investigatory and symbolic. It asks the public to look inward while inviting science to look outward. That Janus-faced posture, accusing the household by implication while inviting external proof, raises uncomfortable moral questions about motive and consequence. Is John trying to clear the family by identifying an intruder, or is he using public science to potentially reassign blame within the household? Either option would be seismic. Either would explain why he remained silent for so long. There is one more dimension here that is easy to overlook: the effect of early contamination and procedural choices. The crime scene was not preserved in the way modern investigators would wish. Friends, family, and first responders moved through rooms. Evidence was handled in a chaotic environment. Discovery and scene control were imperfect. Those early missteps mean that even the best DNA testing today can face limits of contamination and interpretive ambiguity. John's call for retesting recognizes that limits exist but also suggests a belief that modern tools can cut through older noise. If genetic genealogy or improved touch DNA analysis produces a clean match to an outsider, the intruder theory gains steam. If it identifies a contributor with a household link, the inside-the-house theory will feel vindicated. If it shows nothing conclusive, we return to a public and procedural reckoning. How did actions taken in the first hours, by investigators and by family, shape the possibilities of truth? We cannot ignore the human element: grief, fear, and the instinct to protect. No matter which path this leads down, the moral calculus is brutal. If an accidental or impulsive family act killed a child, the emotional response of protecting a living child at the time may have seemed to parents like the least evil option. If an intruder is identified, the decades of suspicion toward a grieving family will look like an injustice. John Ramsey's late decisions, to urge retesting and to publicly intimate his wife's possible role, will be judged differently depending on what the evidence shows. That is why the demand for rigorous, transparent, and methodically sound forensic work is not simply academic. It is the social mechanism by which we can move from rumor and rhetoric towards something closer to adjudicated fact. So what now? The concrete steps are clear. Items must be re-examined under the strictest chain of custody protocols. New genetic genealogy methods should be applied where appropriate. All interpretations must be couched in the limits of contamination and mixed sample ambiguity, and investigators need to be explicit about what a match would and would not prove. Public pressure, when paired with methodical science, can produce breakthroughs. It can also produce noise that muddies interpretation. John Ramsey's intervention has provided both pressure and attention. Whether that attention yields a definitive identification of an external perpetrator, a new corroboration of an inside-the-house scenario, or simply more unanswered questions depends on the small, stubborn work of forensic science and legal inquiry. Before we close, remember why this matters beyond sensational headlines. It matters because a 6-year-old's life ended in violent, unresolved circumstances, because a family's choices have shaped public discourse for decades, and because the promise of modern forensic methods gives renewed hope that some answers might finally be attainable. John Ramsey's statements are not a verdict. They are an invitation to re-examine, with scientific rigor and ethical caution, evidence that has sat dormant for too long. They also compel us to consider how grief, reputation, and a parent's instinct to protect can distort truth and justice. Now it's your turn. After hearing how John Ramsey's comments shift the focus back into the house and why items like the ransom note, the paintbrush garrote, the mag light, and the pineapple matter more than ever, what do you believe happened? Do you think new genetic genealogy testing will point to an intruder, or will it expose a cover-up? Is John Ramsey helping to heal a wound he once kept covered, or is he complicating an already fraught story? Be civil, be detailed, and share the city you're watching from. Your perspective matters. If you want updates, hit subscribe and ring the bell. If the labs reopen evidence or officials release new files, we'll break it down here. Thank you for watching, and for demanding that rigorous inquiry, not rumor, guide what we claim to know about what happened that night.